Hello everyone and welcome back to another one of Jeremy's Startup Adventure Vlogs. So before we start, as we do always, hey guys, come join us on our Discord. Discord.gg, link is in the description. Join our tester community, get test keys on SciComm, Cybernet Combat, and Crystal Rain. Give us feedback, we need all your feedback, and file bugs, feature requests, multiplayer matchmaking. Join our Discord, link is in the description. Also, check out our Patreon if you like what we do. Patreon.com/virtual, Virtual World Arcade. Link will also be in the description. $5 is a meal for a hungry developer. I appreciate all your support from our community so far. So let's get into the meat of things. So this is a Startup Adventure vlog, not a SciComm update. Didn't do a SciComm update this week, and I haven't done Jeremy's Startup Adventures vlog for like about a year now. So figured, hey, we should do something, and just kind of woke up in a good mood to do a vlog. So let's talk what we've learned in the past year running a VR studio, developing games. There's a lot of stuff to talk about, business-wise, doing a VR studio, being a VR developer, designing how to design VR games, and also kind of on a personal level, kind of the journey that we've been through. So in terms of what we've learned for any of those who are interested, who are looking into getting into VR or getting into game development or doing a startup of your own, VR is a very, very new field, very exciting, but you should know that the VR market is still very small. So there's not really much money in there. And those are the kinds of challenges and problems that we've discovered and learned through experiencing this through the past year and a half. When we first, there's not a lot of people in home playing VR who has VR headsets and things like that right now. There's not a lot of VR arcades out there right now, and VR arcades themselves most of them make good money, but as a developer trying to make money, in-home is kind of small, VR arcades is kind of small, so the next question is, if you're a VR developer and you need to pay for rent and you need to pay for food, where do you go, what do you do? So I want to share some of the things that we found with you guys. When Vive first came out, when Steam first came out with VR games, the first couple of VR games that came out, they were successful. They were some of the first ones, but that wave has kind of died down a little bit. Although it's going to continue growing once Vive V2s and Oculus is now on the platform and things like that. So it's going to go up and down, and it's going to slowly trend up. I see people start to really adopt VR around like in their homes, ubiquitous, and around 3 to 4 years from now. And that's really when if you jump into the market, then there's going to be a lot of users buying my game and things like that. Similar to how the PC starting to mature PC market or starting to mature mobile market. That time I see that as a couple of years from now, when people really start buying VR headsets like for Christmas and whatever. And then there's also been VR developers developing games for VR arcades, and we've done both. We've done in-home and developing for VR arcades. And at the beginning it was especially difficult because VR arcades were super new. There were very few of them, and at the very beginning they were still trying to get off the ground and figure out how do we make money? How do we how do the VR arcades pay for themselves? And we own our own VR arcades, so we know the struggles. But now, more and more VR arcades all over the world, US, China, Japan, Korea, Middle East, Europe, and even Africa as well. They're popping up all over the place. There's hundreds of VR arcades that can run your game as a VR developer. But even then, it's still growing. It's still not there yet. So if you're just jumping into the market as a VR developer, the best thing you can do is develop. Well, what we found is develop a game that works really great for in-home, and people in-home will love it, and it works really great for VR arcades. So when VR arcades make money, they can also pay you as the developer, and then But at the end of the day, unless your game is like the top 10, the most played game at a bunch of VR arcades or the most played game, one of the most played games in home, it's going to be really hard as an indie developer to really, be able to sustain themselves. Unless like you're one person and your cost is super low, you're staying with your parents, things like that. Um, so what do studios do? Well, they use their skills, their game development skills, their VR experience, their uh, ability to deliver projects, those skills, and they do contracts. They contract for companies. Let's say a company wants. So there's a couple of different levels of doing it. Everybody who goes into indie development, game development, VR development, they have this game they're super passionate about. They want to work on something they're passionate about. And the same goes for us. So there's kind of different levels you could approach this. You could go to a publisher and you could pitch a game that you're really passionate about and go, hey, I really want to make this game, and then if the publisher signs off on it, then they could give you a budget to do it and then essentially help you pay for rent while you work on it. And there's small and big publishers. And then the other, kind of another next step above that, or further away from that, is using those skills to develop like a really short, VR experience or game experience for a marketing campaign. Let's say the next Spider-Man movie's coming out. Then you go, oh, okay, I've developed these games. We can help you guys promote your new product or your new movie or whatever. And there's actually a lot of money. There's actually a lot of money in that because these big companies that have products to promote, they make their money off of the product or the movie. They don't expect to make money off of the game that you make. The game that you make is more of a TV ad or it's an advertisement. So it's very interesting to see. Oh, right now during this early VR stage, that's actually where a lot of studios and indie developers can kind of sustain themselves and make short bits of content, pay for rent, and then keep working on the projects that they love doing. And then, of course, the farthest out thing is just using your programming skills or your VR experience or your game development skills to do just something that somebody else wants you to do, and they'll pay you a couple $100,000, and then you do this project for 3 months, 6 months, whatever, and then you ship it, and then you have the money, and you can pay for rent for a couple months and keep working on what you're working on. So that's kind of what our experience in VR has been. The problems, the challenges, the solutions that we found, what we found work for us. So let's kind of change gears into what we've learned in terms of VR game design. So we jumped into this. VR being super, super interesting to me. I've been a super casual gamer. I've never really been into games. But when VR came, I was like, yeah, this is the type of game that I would want to play. We all jumped into this without any game development experience, and let alone VR experience. So there was a lot for us to learn. We had to learn how to make and design a good game, and we had to learn how to design a good game in VR. And it's totally, two different, very big challenges. And what we've learned is, at the beginning, I was very adamant about creating this awesome experience, with heavily story driven and make it a wow, awesome visual audio experience and things like that. And very quickly we found that the challenge with that was one, there's not enough time to tell a story. Especially if we're a small studio and we only have, maybe 5-10 minutes of gameplay, which is what we were designing for before for the VR arcade, to actually deliver that kind of impact. And the second thing is for a game and an experience are two very different things. And this is something I learned. The team actually taught me this because they're gamers. A game needs to have fun gameplay, core gameplay mechanics, and it should be fun to replay as well. That's really how games become successful. They can be replayed every day. Whereas an experience is more like a movie. You do it one time, and you don't really need to go back to it and watch it or play it again. And but the thing is, if we're making a game and there's not that many people who are going to see it, unlike movies, everybody around the world will see your movie, so that's kind of an easy a business model to work with. But if we're working in VR and we're working with games, if only a few people get access to it and they'll only watch it or play it once, that doesn't really work out in the end. It makes it very difficult to do. And you have, on top of that, you have to spend a lot of time developing the story and the characters and a lot of development time and things like that. Things that's very tough right now in VR, especially if you don't have like a big company, big game, publisher backing you up, to spend all that time to develop all that and make it really good. So we learned to focus on the core game mechanics, fun, replayable gameplay mechanics, and that's just in game design in general. So that's what I learned, and how to design games. And then there's VR. How do you design games in VR? Because it's totally different from designing in PC and in mobile. And so for me, the biggest challenge of designing in VR is the interaction model. In PC, everything is already standard. WASD, arrow keys, mouse click, left click, right click, and moving the mouse around. And in mobile, after some time, it became pretty standard as well. It's typically, drag or swipe or tap, and those are pretty much, the most successful models. But in VR, it's so new. Nobody, even today, has figured out what the right way to interact in VR is. And I think the biggest challenge there is game developers come into this with the PC and the mobile interaction in mind. But players come into VR because a lot of people never played video games before, played VR. Players come into this knowing what they do in real life, because in VR you can actually walk with your legs and move your arms like in real life. So there's a bit of a disconnect, and VR still isn't a perfect technology yet. We can't actually use our fingers, for the most part, as well as we do in real life. We can't really use our eyes, at least in a lot of hardware, where we're looking with our eyes, or we really only have two controllers and a headset that does tracking for you. So and some buttons, which you don't really use in real life. You don't control things with buttons. You use your hands and fingers, or your feet and legs. So it's kind of figuring out, how do we make the game as simple as possible, utilize as much as how people interact in real life as possible, walking, touching things with their hands. People don't really use buttons in real life. They don't hold controllers and interact with things with buttons in real life. Looking, and those types of ways to interact. So. We learned a couple kind of no-go things, at least for us, things that don't work. If you try to use complicated buttons, essentially anything that's not the primary buttons on a controller, you're gonna have a bad time as a game designer. The players aren't gonna. You're gonna have to teach the players, and then two. You're going to have to count on them remembering or being able to use it easily, and buttons are hard to use in VR. And the problem with both of those is, one, players don't want to learn things. Players don't never want to do a tutorial, and two, players will never remember what they learned in the tutorial. So given those things, you really just have to design something that the players will just know without you teaching them. And that's, I reach my hand out to touch this thing, or I look over there and I can start interacting, or I can walk over here and now I'm from here to here. So that's kind of my philosophy right now. That's what I've learned. That's what I would process as my experience, and what I would want to share to developers, designers going into VR. And the other thing is, I guess that's about it. That's about it with interaction design. So. On a personal level, though, I'm still having the time of my life, as the same as when I first started the Startup Adventures vlog. I feel like I've personally been seeking this moment for all my life, being able to do whatever I want to do whenever I want to do it. And I have a team. I have a team of awesome people that I can hang out with and create great games and experiences with. And it feels great. So I'm having a ton of fun, and I'm with my role. I'm juggling, the business and the game projects and the passion and the fun, within the team, juggling all of these things. And my goal is just to, take everybody through, enable everybody, all these awesome people on my team to be awesome and do all the great things that they're great at. So, um, yeah, so check us out. We released 2 games on Steam recently. Check out Cycom, CYCOM, Cycom Cybernet Combat on Steam. That's this guy right here. We're super proud of it. It's a shooter and card game in VR, real-time shooter with card game deck mechanic strategy. And also Crystal Rain. This guy right here, Crystal Rain, Rain spelled REIGN. It's a tower defense. So, yes, VR tower defense game built in a very beautiful, as you can see, fantasy universe. So we're also super excited about a couple games that are coming out in the future. In the very, very near future, we have Cold Cuts coming out. It's a little small mini game. It's super fun. It's about slashing and cutting up things. Patrick spent a lot of time and developed a really, really fun game, and we're super excited to release it out in a week, actually. And we have another big project that we're working on